Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Guratmeti Murti Beda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyaptadeyaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tavagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Sadgurum Pranatosmyaham Om Shri Krishna, Govinda, Narayana. So, samsara is love of objects. You get your joys, you get your sorrows. Depending on the degree of how much sattva you have in your mind, you're relatively more successful. Depending on the degree of rajas and tamas, you're relatively less successful in samsara. You can manage your gunas for samsara if you want. It's a good idea. If you're a complete samsari, study the guna teaching. It will help you. And you're not interested in any of this spiritual stuff, but you're interested in getting what you want in the world, understanding the gunas is a great help. But we're obviously interested in non-dual love. Non-dual love means unconditional love. It means you don't think about it. You just express yourself naturally. Just like you love yourself, you see everybody as yourself. And so you treat everybody else as you treat yourself. You treat yourself with the highest respect, right? You love yourself more than anything. So if everybody's me, then everybody gets the same treatment I get. And you pamper yourself, and you love yourself, and you take care of yourself because you love yourself. And so why shouldn't you look after everybody else in the same spirit? Why not? If they're you. If they're not you, well then that's a problem. But we're saying that everything is nothing but you. See, there's no world apart from your mind, from your thoughts. You're never experiencing anything out there in the world. We've made it look like or sound as if there was a world outside of you that you're experiencing, but you're never experiencing anything out there. You're always experiencing everything only in here. So the idea of my wife or my boyfriend, my husband, that's purely a conceptual idea. You don't own anybody out there. You can't claim that that's your children or your husband or your job or your wife. You can't claim that. Who does that belong to? Who does that belong to? Ishvara, to God. God made it all. God sustained it all, and God's going to destroy it all, so none of it belongs to you. So you can't say, this is mine. Okay? So Karma Yoga is appreciating that you're totally dependent on God, that everything belongs to God, and that everything is God. So you just have to start relating to everything in that way, the same way you'd relate yourself to yourself with great love, with great care, and great concern. Yes.
Other question, did God made also what humans made, or is it the difference?
Did God make what?
Also what humans made. Humans built aeroplanes and cars.
Yeah, sure.
Everything.
Yeah.
Nothing.
No, nothing is. No, everything that humans make is made by God, because human beings can't make anything without God, can they? All the material to make anything comes from God. and all the intelligence that to create any object comes from God. Nobody created any material objects. The matter was already here. We can shape them into different things. And the intelligence to shape an object to make a creation, that's all borrowed from God. So there's not one thing that doesn't belong to God. We're lucky because God has loaned us a physical body. It's like going to the bank. God's the bank. And so it loans you the physical body, it loans you an emotional body, loans you an intellectual body, and gives you a life and a whole stream of karma, gives all that to you. And so you borrowed it. And then at the end, it's a contract. At the end, you have to give it back to God, don't you? You have no choice about it. Of course, you don't like that contract. But so, when you're born here, you're already under contract. It means when you come here, you're going to leave here. And then everything that you acquired here, you got to give back to God because it's all borrowed from God. So you might as well think of it as God's children, God's husband, God's job, God's car, God's mother. Yeah, your mother, your father, they're all God.
Also money?
Huh?
Money as well?
Money, yeah, all the money's God too. Everything. You got to give the money back. We don't like that one, do we? You know, like the guy who, I read in the paper about a man who was dying. He was very rich, and all his relatives were around the bed waiting for him to die because he had a lot of money. And you know what he did? He took the safety deposit box and he swallowed it.
Oh.
He thought he was going to take it with him. He didn't realize they just cut him open and take it home. So everything stays behind. So everything here is a gift. It's a loan. And if you don't pay back your loans, then when you leave this earth, you have to come back and do it again. Fortunately, you don't know that you didn't do it before, so you're all right there. So karma yoga is offering to God your actions. In other words, consecration. It's a religious idea. You say, you're the man who has everything. You're the person, or you're the God that has everything, but you don't have sense organs, so you can't act. And so I'm going to act for you. You can act through me to get what you want. And I offer my life to you. Karma yoga is turning over your life to God. And letting God tell you what you want and what you don't want. Oh, that's scary, isn't it? See now that's going to involve a discipline. We said here that formal devotion means what? It's a discipline. A disciple of God or a devotee of God is a disciplined person. Now, what does it mean to say you're a disciplined person? It means you're constantly what? Controlling and monitoring your thoughts and your feelings and your motivations to make sure that the things you offer to God are worthy of God. Because if you offer something ugly and nasty, what's God you're going to get back? Huh? Something ugly and nasty. As you sow, so shall you reap. The law of karma is what you put in, you get out. So if you offer bad thoughts and bad feelings and so forth and so on, you offer anger and judgment, and you have to offer all those things to the people around you, for sure those things will come right back to you. It may take a little while, it doesn't take long. You start experiencing bad karma. That's God's answer to you. This is God saying, so you feel like this? Well, how does it feel to get what you're putting out? If you're a judgmental person, you're making judgments. People will judge you. That people that are judging you is your own judgments coming back at you. Yeshua said, okay, you like to give people this trouble? Okay, people will give you trouble back. That's the way it works. That's the only way you're going to learn. Some people are too thick in their head to actually think first. So they have to be educated by God. By what? By the results of their actions. Understand? God knows best. You don't know best. If you knew best, you'd be happy. But you obviously don't know best because you're unhappy. Whereas if you offer your actions to God and you take the results as a gift, we call it prasad in Sanskrit, as a gift from God, then what? Then it's all on God. You don't have to worry about your karma. God takes care of your karma. And you're happy to get what you want. You're grateful. Thank you, Lord. Thank you very much. You're a kind and generous God. And when God whacks you, which he does often, you say, thank you, God. Thank you very much. You're a very kind God. I needed that. I'm so stupid. I'm so selfish. I'm so emotional that I deserve to be punished for what? For inflicting my misery on the world. This is a good wake-up call. Thank you very much. You're grateful for what? For getting what you don't want. And you're grateful for getting what you do. Understand? Now what's that going to do to your likes and your dislikes, your preferences? What's it going to do? Neutralize them. It's going to neutralize them. Karma Yoga is neutralizing your likes and your dislikes. It's not removing them, it's neutralizing them. It means they don't have any power anymore. They can be preferences. You could prefer one thing to be this way or prefer it to the other way. But however God makes it turn out is what you accept. You see, now that's hard, isn't it? See the discipline? Because there's this war with your ego. Because your ego just wants what it wants, when it wants it, the way it wants it. And if it doesn't, it gets angry or nasty. Or depressed. Oh, I'm such a failure. I couldn't get anything right. I tried so hard. The world. You blame mom, you blame pop, and you blame the federal government, you blame religion, and you blame anybody that you can find, you blame for your problems. But you don't have problems. You are the problem. You have to take responsibility. That's what we say. You have to acknowledge who you are and your situation and be honest about how you're living. You can't just pretend that you're spiritual. That doesn't work. You have to be totally transparent and honest with yourself. And you have to know what your weaknesses are. God is telling you, you're weak here. You need work in this area. That's why he's giving you this trouble. You know, if you have trouble with love relationships, you know, if you, oh no, she was like this, you see, and she was so selfish, and she did this, and then you go get another girlfriend, and then what? And then she becomes the problem. And you have 5 or 6 relationships, or 8 or 10 relationships, and the problem is always, you think that you don't get the right person. You think, oh, maybe the 11th relationship is going to be the right person. No, there's no right person. There's always only one person. It's just a woman or a man. That's all. And it's always the same woman, and it's always the same man. And the women and the man are no different. They're just the same person. It's all just a human being. So if it's not working, it's because of you, not because of the object. This is called responsibility. This is called maturity. This will make a a mature, grown-up person out of you. You got guys like Donald Trump who are like 70 years old, and they're like 6-year-old mentality. They're like children. This guy did not emotionally grow past about 5 or 6. That's about it. He wants what he wants, it, the way he wants it, and if he doesn't like it, he gets angry and attracts people. That's what little kids do. Mommy, I want a bicycle. No, he can't give you a bicycle. Kick your mom. Huh? That's immature. That's childish. And you know, your inner child. To hell with your inner child. We need an inner adult here. If you're going to live, actualize your full potential, you need an inner adult. You need a grown-up person with some kind of dispassion and some kind of discrimination and some kind of devotion to something higher. You need to have the capacity to love something other than just your own wants, your own needs. That's a grown-up, that's a mature adult. So Karma Yoga is going to grow you up. And it's a daily practice. And it's not only, mind you, it's not only an attitude of gratitude with respect to action and its results. It's not only that attitude. It's right action also. Right attitude and right action. Understand? So once you sign on to the Vedanta program, you have to do, you don't have any choice about these practices from then on. If you stay out of the Vedanta program, then it's all up to you and you can just do what you want. And it's fine, you go ahead and do what you want. Maybe you'll get to God, maybe you won't, we don't know. And we don't care. This is for people, grown-up people, who what? Mature people who want to take charge of their own destiny. Who want to make their lives go in the right direction, toward their goal. Instead of just, most people, what are their lives like? They just zig and zag everywhere. They go this way for a while, and it doesn't work, and then they go that way for a while, and it doesn't work, and then they go that way for a while, and it doesn't work, and they go over there, and it doesn't work. And they spend 60, 70, 80 years trying to figure out what they want to be in life. And at the end of the life, they feel frustrated. I never got anywhere. My father, on his deathbed, God rest his soul, you know what he said? He said, well, if I have any words of wisdom to impart to you, son, he said, they are this. I was too soon old and too late smart. Huh? Means he knew that he wasted his whole life. That's integrity. That's a person who understands things. You don't want to be like that person. You don't want to just chase around after this and that, thinking that at the end of this rainbow, there's going to be a pot of gold. The only pot of gold is you. You're the most valuable thing. You're the rich. You're your own wealth. There's nothing more valuable, give you more security than yourself. So thinking that some object is going to solve the problem, money, sex, power, security, pleasure, education, whatever it is. Whatever goal you think is going to solve your problem. Love. You think, relationship, that's going to solve the problem. Or children, that's another one. I've got to have children. I'm born to make children. Well, hey, listen, that's not a talent. That's the easiest thing you can do. Because God's doing it all. God's just reproducing through you, that's all. And you think it's your children. What? You think those are your children? You did not one thing you did to create those things. And maybe you looked after them properly, and maybe you didn't. I mean, if you take them as a gift and you treat them like you take them as, treat them with love and send them on their own and teach them who they are, well, fine, fair enough. But so karma yoga is a huge discipline because you're standing up to your desires. In the first stage, you don't stand up to your desires, you just act out your desires, and then you take the results from as Ishwar. And then as you get more strong, you get strong doing that. As you get more strong, then the next stage of karma yoga, it's one stage higher, what do? There you're not allowed to pursue your desires anymore. What do you have to do? You have to stand up to your desires. Why? Because your desires and your fears are proxies for ignorance. That proves you're ignorant. What you want and what you don't want proves you're ignorant. So you don't have to worry about God. Just worry about just understand that desires and fears are signs of ignorance. And so there, rather than indulge those fears and those desires, what do? You stand up to them. You say, I can do without that. I don't have to worry about, the world making trouble for me. I'm not worried about germs or whatever it is you're worried about. Germs are good. My body's full of germs. You stop worrying about stuff. Understand? Whatever it is. And I want this. I don't need that. Now, you may not be totally confident that you're whole and complete, but you have to what? Act as if you were whole and complete. You have to actually take a stand in your wholeness and completeness, even though it doesn't feel right. Because your feelings are not evidence of the truth. Your feelings are not statements of the truth. I got a special yoga. It's called Fifi Yoga. You know what Fifi Yoga is? It's F-Y-F-Y. Fifi. It's fuck your feelings yoga. Your feelings don't prove anything except that you have feelings. They're not evidence. In the court of law, it doesn't matter what you feel, does it? They want evidence. Your feelings are not evidence of anything except ignorance. So this is a job. This is a big job. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. And say, oh, it's all so wonderful, it's all spiritual. Oh, you would love everybody, hug everybody. You think that's bhakti yoga? That's not bhakti yoga. That's just fantasy land. Yeah. This ain't gonna help. So, I have to stand up. I have to become I hate to use this word, a human, a man. Man up, or woman up in this case. If you're a woman, woman up. It means take charge of your life. Stop whining, stop complaining. This selfish person is just a big whiner. Always whining, always complaining. It makes you sick. You look at our president, he's the biggest whiner in the world. He whines louder than any baby in the nursery. The nursery's full of all sorts of babies, and he's the guy that screams and whines the loudest. I don't want babies, I want my dad. I don't like that. These likes and dislikes are the problem. Believing they're real is the problem. So I need to have a commitment to something higher than my own feelings to get out of my feelings, to resolve my feelings. If you look at your feelings your feelings and your thoughts from a higher point of view, then what? You're going to get out of them. Now, what's the higher point of view? That's the next stage. Here I love God as the giver of the results of my action. Here I love my personal God. Here I love stuff. But here, what do I love? Truth. I love knowledge. Now, what is the knowledge? That I'm whole and complete, that I'm free. See, that's where we're going. In Vedanta, we don't tell you that one fine day you'll get enlightened. It's not like that. That's what most of these spiritual paths do, because they don't know what enlightenment is. So they tell you that, oh, just sit and breathe on, watch your nose. Watch your breath coming in and out. Well, how long should I do that? Until you wake up. Until you get enlightened. Or any other practice. I'm just making a drama out of this. But how's that going to work? What kind of knowledge are you going to get from watching your breath? What kind of knowledge will you get? You'll get breath knowledge. That's it. And what is breath knowledge? It doesn't take a rocket science to figure out what breath knowledge is. Breath knowledge is breath comes in and it goes out. That's it. And it keeps life going. And I'm not breathing anyway. Are you breathing now?
Yes.
No.
No. You're wrong. No, you're not. You're listening to me talk. You just said you're breathing, but if you're breathing, then you won't be able to listen to me talk because you'll be spending all your energy breathing to keep yourself alive, won't you? Is that right? So to claim that your breathing is not correct, Ishwara, God's breathing. And you're allowed to enjoy yourself. You don't have to worry about. What about your meal? Are you digesting your food right now? Huh? No, you're not. You're not digesting your food. The self doesn't have any stomach and doesn't eat. So how's it going to digest? And you, the person, is obviously doing something else. So that God is in you, what? Digesting your food for you, turning it into energy by creating waste, doing all the things that God does for you. So it's sustaining life for you and keeping you going so you can, enjoy yourself here. Is that? I understand how radical this is. This is really seemingly radical. It's just the opposite of the way that samsaric people think. Okay? It's trusting God. Now, once you get that trust in God, once you get that trust, then you start to relax. Well, that tension goes away. That worry, that tension about getting what you want, it goes away. And you start to relax. And then what happens? Then then God starts to think in you. And start to ask questions. Who is this God? What is this God? Aren't you curious to know who or what this God is? What the nature of this God is? Yeah, you are. You want to know. Because when you're not just so preoccupied with your own personal problems, you're able to start to look at the big picture. And what's my relationship, my ultimate relationship to God? Do I really depend upon God, or am I free of God? Oh. Huh? If you're free, freedom's freedom, isn't it? So if you're dependent upon God, you've got a problem, don't you? You're not free, are you? Is that right? Think about it. God's the creator of the world and the maintainer of the Dharma field. In other words, maintainer of the laws and rules that operate here. Well, Do I depend upon God, or does God depend upon me? I need to solve that problem. Because I don't want to be stuck here in this earth, depending upon anything, do I? I want to be free of everything. That's what non-dual love is. So loving God is loving something I think is something other than myself, right? That's called Dvaita, or dualistic love, dualistic bhakti. So now I'd like to be free of that. Who am I, and what is my actual relationship to God and this body and this world? What is my actual relationship? I want to know that. So Vedanta, it's called Upasana Yoga, and Vedanta answers that question for you. Vedanta removes your doubts about the nature of God, and it reveals your identity with God. So in dualistic devotion or dualistic bhakti, what? I don't have an identity, I have a master and a slave relationship, don't I? God is my master and I'm the servant of God. So God's the boss. Now, that's good up to a point, but it's still not freedom. Now that's taken care of. You know, like a good servant, for instance. A good servant has, he's got life tenure. He knows that what his boss needs him, and as long as he serves the boss, he's got a job. So, but do I want to be anybody to be my boss? Most of you spiritual people are rebels. I know I was. I told you. I forego the idea of getting a job, and I could have got a job because I came from a good family and I was educated. But I didn't want it because I didn't want a boss. So I decided to strike out on my own and just make do with my own wits. I figured I can figure things out on my own. I'll take care of myself. I do not want a boss. And most of us don't want to be bossed around. We're rebels. We want to be free. Isn't it? So, ideally, I'd like to be free of God too, wouldn't it? Yeah. I know that may be even hard for you to imagine. Being free of this world, and being free of your body, and being free of your mind, and being free of everything. But it's entirely possible.
But if it's totally merged, is there still a problem then?
Pardon?
But if it's totally merged, the idea of God and the idea of me as a person, if it's totally merged, there is no problem there anymore.
Well, what's the identity? In other words, there is a difference, though, isn't there? How do they merge? That's a good question. How do you merge God and a person into what? How do you do that?
By becoming the same consciousness.
But how could you become that consciousness?
By, I wanted to say, obeying the rules of that consciousness.
No, you can't. If you obey the rules, you just get limited results.
Yeah.
So obeying rules and doing what you're supposed to do, like a good little boy or girl in school.
No, it was clear while I was saying it. My English is not.
Yeah, no, I know. It's all right. That's fine.
Yeah.
No, there is an identity. There is an identity between me, the person, and God, the total. I'm in charge of my little life, and God's in charge of the whole thing. Isn't that right? That's how. I have a little life, and I have some free will, so I can make some choices here, and I can influence, and to some degree control or influence what happens in my little life.
But then you become so empty of yourself that you become so full of God, then there is no space left for something else.
So then you wouldn't say there was God or you anymore.
No, yes, exactly.
Okay, that's what we're saying. Absolutely, you're correct. I thought that's what you meant.
Yes, it was
But the language, the merger language, the yoga language is a problem. Because if there's only God, then there's nothing to move in to merge. Huh? If there's only God. See, this is our premise. This is what we're saying from the beginning. There's only God. There's not two things other than God. So if you think there's two things other than God, then what kind of a merger is it? What kind of a yoga is it? Well, it's a yoga that's already accomplished. In other words, you're already non-different from God, you just don't know it. Now, what Vedanta does is it takes away your ignorance about this fact. And how does it do that? That's the important thing. It reveals to you the unexamined knowledge or logic of your own experience. Now, what does that mean? That's a deep statement. Needs to be explained. That means at some part of you, in your heart, you could say, in your essence, in your heart, you know you're non-separate from God and non-separate from you. You know that. But a lot of actions, a lot of ignorance has taken place, and that knowledge is covered up or hidden from you. And so you come to incorrect conclusions about what? You come to incorrect conclusions about the nature of your body, the nature of your emotions, the nature of your life here, the nature of the world, and the nature of God. In other words, ignorance has hidden or covered this knowledge, this innate knowledge that's hidden in everybody. Because you never were separate from God, ever. You couldn't be. You are God, will always be God. There's nothing but God. And God wasn't born. So God's eternal. That's why when you understand this, your worry stops because you realize you can't die, you're immortal, and then what? And then all your worries go away because the fear of death doesn't bother you anymore, and change doesn't bother you anymore, and you're perfectly happy. And if this body dies, you look out through all the other bodies that are still there. You experience life through all the billions of other conscious beings that are there. Understand? So this innate knowledge is built into every human being. But it's hidden, it's uncovered. And so what we do, what Vedanta does, it just gets you to what? To see the connection, in other words, to trace back to the source and see that what you thought you didn't know, you always did know. Because when you hear this teaching, it makes total sense and you feel happy. And you say, oh, I knew that all along. That's not a surprise. Now, how does it do that? How does it go about that? Well, Vedanta is a three-stage process. It's a three-stage devotional process. Okay? The first two stages are what? Karma yoga, the 2 stages of karma yoga. And then the third stage is what? It's called listening. You're all doing a good job at this stage right now. We're in the listening mode. We're in the first stage of Vedanta. It's called listening. Now, what does listening mean? Listening or hearing. The Sanskrit word is shravana, or hearing. Now, what is hearing? Hearing is hearing what's actually being said without interpreting what you hear. See, now the discipline gets very difficult. It's hard enough to stand up to your desires and to keep your mind on God all the time when you're acting. But now listen, when you're talking to somebody, when you meet somebody and you're speaking to a person, and they make a statement, what happens to your mind? You immediately try to understand what they mean in terms of what you understand, in terms of your knowledge. Is that right? You immediately, because why? You need a box to put them in. You don't see them as God. You want to shove them into a little box in your mind where it's comfortable and where they won't disturb you. So you're constantly evaluating, what does he like, what does she like, what is this and that and that and the other thing, to see what kind of a person they are and whether you're going to like them or not or understand them or not. You want to know. So what do you do when you hear them make a statement? You immediately categorize them. You conceptualize them and you produce a thought right away. And then you start seeing them through that thought. And then as they give you more information, you modify that thought. But all the time you're looking at them through your own beliefs and opinions and prejudices and biases. You don't even let them finish saying what they're saying before you have already figured out what you think they are. Which means what? You stopped listening as soon as they started talking. You can't wait to tell them what you think. Isn't that right? Did you ever do that? Yeah, you did. You do it all the time. That's what everybody does. Huh? You don't actually listen to... You guys are doing well. You're listening to what I'm saying. You're paying attention, I can tell. Huh? So what? So you're not really evaluated, are you? Because I can see... I'm a teacher, so I can see by looking at your energy in your faces whether or not you're paying attention or whether or not you're absorbing what I'm saying. And nobody's arguing. You may have an argument in your mind, but what do you do with the argument that's in your mind? You see, you put it aside and you say, well, maybe this guy has something to say. Let's hear what he has to say. Let's hear the whole story. Because Vedanta is not easy. It gives you a whole train of logical statements which you have to check from your own experience to determine whether or not it's true. And as you can see, as I've worked slowly through these ideas, nobody's objected so far. Why not? Because you know it's true. If it wasn't true, you'd fight. Well, you only know it's true because you're actually listening to what I'm saying. There's some people that come in and they think they know everything. And so they argue in their mind with everything that I say. And then once they get an opening, then they start an argument. They try to start an argument. But we don't argue. We never argue. It's pointless. It's totally pointless. Because you get to argue. Now listen. It doesn't mean you can't argue and you shouldn't argue. But you need to argue once you've heard the teaching. You can't come in thinking you know something and then criticize the whole teaching because on the basis of some little statement that the teaching makes that irritates you, that you don't like. You have to be fair and open-minded and an adult. You have to be professional, a professional listener, and actually hear, well, he said this, and this. And how did I feel about that? How did I see that? What did he actually say? You should be able to repeat the logic, and then you can attack it. If you've actually heard it. If you've actually heard it, you won't attack it because it will make sense. But if your prejudices or your beliefs, your biases, your opinions I've taken over, then what? Then you'll say, well, that's a bunch of bullshit, James. I think, and then you'll say what you think. Well, then the conversation is ended because we don't argue. You're free to think whatever you want. In the second stage, now listen, the second stage is where even more difficult, because for Vedanta to work, and it's only going to work if you have a guru, because the tendency for self-deception is amazing. We just love to lie to ourselves. We're so good at lying to ourselves, believe me, that you need to have somebody who's objective who can tell you, that's baloney, that's not correct, and explain to you why your thinking isn't correct. But in the second stage, what's the difficulty? Why is it so why is Vedanta so difficult? Because for you to progress spiritually, for you to grow in understanding, in knowledge, in truth, for you to grow in understanding, you've got to what? This is painful, I know, I understand, you don't like it, you're not going to like it, huh? But this is the way it works. You've got to sacrifice what you believe and think and feel, and accept what the truth is. If you disagree, and if you disagree, you have to keep contemplating on the teaching until what? You see the logic, you see the truth in it. Once you see the truth in it, then you're happy to let go of your beliefs and your opinions. And it's hard because most of us think that our ignorance is knowledge. We don't realize it's not your fault. I'm not blaming anybody. There's no blame involved in this. It's just that, well, you think, well, because I experienced it and I came to this conclusion and that so forth and so on, that, you know, and I experienced it, and it must be true. But it's not true because you experienced it necessarily. It may be true and it may not be true. You have to see whether or not what you think and feel is in line with the truth, with what you've heard. And you can do it because these are not my words. If they were my words, you should get out of here. You should go somewhere else. Because how do you know? I can sell ice to an Eskimo. So I can sell you most anything. But so you better not believe me. Huh? You better not trust the guru. Understand? Because how do you know? You have to trust the logic, the words. These are the words of what? Of God. These are not my words. And I can't claim them as my words. I'm telling you, every single thing that comes out of my mouth when I'm sitting here, except the jokes. And you know when I'm just talking. You know when I'm just having a nice time. Every single thing that I say when I have my guru hat on, when I take my guru hat off and you meet me on the street, you can, you don't know what you're going to get. But here, it's my job to what? To just explain the words of the Lord. Explain God's words to you. I have to do it fairly and impartially, and I can't put my own personal opinion on it. Not that I have a personal opinion anymore, because God's words are perfectly fine. I don't need to have a personal opinion. God's words are just absolutely, totally satisfied, so I might as well just speak God's words. Why not? It's a lot easier than maintaining my opinions in the belief that I'm special, or that I'm different, or that I know more, or something like that, or I'm better, or I'm more spiritual, something. You know how it is. The vanity that comes with knowledge. So you can trust these because they're impersonal. If you go to some guru who tells you he or she had some kind of experience of God, well, you better be maybe they did, but you better be very suspicious. You should be very suspicious, because how do you know they're not interpreting God according to their, what? Their conditioning. And they are, most of them. Most of them have had some kind of vision, some kind of experience. They read a few books, so forth and so on, had some Shaktipat experiences from some gurus and so forth and so on. And then they cobbled together, they came, and then they interpreted. They said, well, it means this and it means that and so forth and so on. And you should listen to me because, this is what got me enlightened. But what got you enlightened isn't necessarily going to get me enlightened if it's based upon personal experience, is it? Because you're different from me and I'm different from you as a person. And I've come to different conclusions from you have. But here, this doesn't come from people. I understand this is a hard thing. This comes to people. This is revealed knowledge. It's not psychological knowledge. It's not opinions. It's not a philosophy, which is a contention of an individual or groups of individuals. It's not a religion. It's not a belief system. We're not interested in your beliefs. We're interested in knowledge only. Understand? This is a means of knowledge. Now, Vedanta as a means of knowledge means what? For you, for you to see my body, what's your means of knowledge? Eyes, right? If you don't have eyes, you can't see my body, can you? Close your eyes. Can you see my body? No. So the means for your knowledge of my body, or my knowledge of your bodies, is what? Is the eyes. Fair enough. Does anybody disagree with that? No. How about my feelings? How about my emotions? I'm quite an emotional person. How do you see my emotions? How do you know what my emotions are? Do you see them with your eyes? No, you don't, do you? You have another instrument for experiencing, for reading, and for knowing my feelings. What is that instrument? It's my heart. You have an emotional center that reads emotions. It reads other people's emotions. You need to know, if that isn't working, you can easily be fooled. Women are particularly good at it. Men are not often so good at it. Their emotional centers tend to be quite highly developed, and they can tell, they can feel what you're feeling. A lot of men, they're often their thoughts and they're kind of gross. So they have a hard time with emotions. But they do have emotions. I don't have any because I'm not a man, but that's all right. Okay, so for knowing emotion, for physical objects, I need physical senses. For knowing what? Emotional objects, I need an emotional means of knowledge. And what about for these ideas? Do you feel these ideas? Do you see these ideas? No, you don't feel these ideas, although there may be feelings associated with these ideas. But you don't feel those ideas or see those ideas. What do? You think them. In other words, you have an instrument that's capable of reading thoughts. We call it the intellect. That's its job. That's what it's supposed to do. God gave you those three instruments because He's got these three objects. You got physical objects, emotional objects, and thought objects. And so for you to negotiate in this world of objects, you need what? You need those three means of knowledge. Otherwise, how are you going to function here? So God's perfectly supplied you with the proper instruments for functioning here. Okay. Now, what's the problem with yourself? What instrument do you have for experiencing yourself? Yeah, you don't have an answer because you don't have an instrument. That's why you don't know. Because there isn't any instrument for you to know yourself. You got perception and inference. You can infer, gain knowledge, or you can perceive, directly experience things, or you can draw conclusions based upon your experience. But neither one of those, perception or inference, is going to actually work on the nature of God, is it? You can maybe assume that there is a God, but it won't tell you what it is. Whereas you don't need to assume what my emotions are. You know what they are, because when I'm angry, you know what it is. Because you directly experience it, because you know what anger is. So you know it. No? So there's not a problem there. So God, whose nature is what? Love, unconditional love, wholeness, completeness, existence, consciousness. God cannot be objectified. In other words, God is not an object. The instruments I've got are good enough for what? For objects, but they're not good enough for the subject, me, consciousness, existence. They're not good enough for that. Why? Because they're not subtle enough to pick up on it, to read it, to know it. So there's no, so it seems like this is why people don't know anything about God. This is why, or even they believe in God, which means they don't know God, or they believe there is no God, right? Or they're doubtful about it. They think there may be a God or may not be a God. Why? Because none of those people have instruments for what? For knowing what God actually is. Whereas we do have an instrument for knowing God. That's the interesting thing about it. Vedanta is a means of knowledge for God. And it's made out of God's own words. In other words, it's made out of knowledge of the nature of reality. See, nobody's argued with any of these statements here. Why? Because they're all true. They're not big statements. They're just true statements. They're not really contentious statements because they're true, and you accept them. You like it. Feel the peace in the room. See the smiles on your faces, the satisfaction. You actually come back after lunch to hear some more. And I didn't make it particularly easy. I made a lot of provocative statements, and I was quite emotional. One fellow said I was pretty gross, not too refined, but that's okay. He's still listening and enjoying. So God can't be known by what? Direct experience. When these people, these gurus tell you that you can experience God or know the self or experience the truth, they're wrong. It doesn't work. Why not? Because we don't have instruments for that. So if you're following some guru who says you have to experience God or experience the truth, then what? You're just going to be frustrated. Most everybody that comes to Vedanta comes because they're frustrated with all these other teachings. Because Vedanta actually shows you, reveals to you what God is. And that you're non-separate from God.
And how do you know that the words of Vedanta are the words of God? I mean, Christian people would say...
Well, because you don't argue with them. When you hear the truth, there's no argument. That's why. You just can't argue with something that's true if you know it's true. If you think something that's true is false, then you can argue with it. But when you actually know what the truth is, there's no argument at all that happens. You just accept it. That's why the room is so quiet when we teach. You feel the silence here? Can you feel that? Huh? Maybe you don't. You can feel there's a peace here. Huh? That's because the presence of God is right here, and these teachings reveal the presence of God. Once you get been, a lot of you may be new and haven't been taught, but once you actually surrender to this means of knowledge, you will start to experience God pretty much continually. The more you listen and hear, the more clear it is to you. I know it happened to me. It's my experience of millions of people over thousands of years. This teaching's been going on for thousands of years, and it's set people free for thousands of years. It's not a new teaching. And it always works the same. And it's never been improved because what? It does the job. The modern spiritual world is always looking for new techniques and new this and new that and trying to formulate things in a new way because what? Because the old ones don't work. Because it's not really the truth. They're talking about the truth, but they're not revealing the truth. There's a difference between talking about God and seeing God. And knowing that what you're seeing is God. And knowing that you're non-separate from God. Which means what? Your nature is unconditional love. There's no difference. You see no... God being free means see no difference between yourself and anything. That's what love is. Love is understanding.
But you are not the creator, or are you also the creator then if you see yourself as one?
Pardon?
But you are not the creator.
No, you're not the creator.
Exactly.
We're talking about beyond creation.
Beyond creation.
Beyond creation. Yeah, because the self is non-created.
Unborn, undying?
Unborn and undying.
Okay.
So that's prior to the creation. Everything in the creation is born and dies. So there's something that's prior to the creation, before God created things. There's something prior to that what? Is beyond creation. And that's what we call yourself. It's called the self. Understand? If reality is non-dual, there's no possibility for there to be creation, is there? So there's another factor that's creating things, and that thing that's creating, that's in you, in awareness, in you, in consciousness, that's creating and sustaining and destroying objects, but it's not you. Understand? You're free of all created things because, Understand? That's what we're talking about here. Now, how does Vedanta work? See? Well, it takes away your ignorance by showing you what the truth is. These are God's words. God just goes through all of the objects and all the processes and all the factors operating in creation and explains them dispassionately and scientifically. Vedanta is called Brahma Vidya, and it means the science of the infinite, the science of consciousness, the science of existence. Science, this means knowledge, because the purpose of science is to get knowledge. So this is a scientific, impersonal means, and all it does is take away your ignorance. Now, once your ignorance about who you are is removed, you still have what? You still have beliefs and opinions, perhaps. And you want your life to line up with what you actually know. It has to be the truth about who you are, don't you? You don't want to know what the truth is and then live an untruthful life, do you? That's only going to create conflict for you, isn't it?
Yes.
Because when knowing something and behaving differently causes a huge conflict. So you want your life to be in harmony with who you are. You want your life to be free. You want your life to be free of conflict. You want your life to be free of fear. You want your life to be free of desire. You want to be free. That's where we started. Freedom's the nature of yourself. It's always pushing you to understand or know itself. Everybody's always looking for freedom. Because freedom is in you. It is you. It needs to be actualized. So the third stage of Vedanta is actualizing the freedom that you are in terms of your daily life, living free. That's called Nidhyasana. Because the fruit of the knowledge that I am whole and complete is what? Perfect satisfaction. When you're at any one of these stages, you're never perfectly satisfied. When you're here, you're obviously not satisfied. When you're here, you're a little more satisfied because you got some relief. When you're here, you're starting to get happier, but you're not completely satisfied. When you're here, you're getting much more happy, but you're still not satisfied. Because why? Because you still think God's somebody other than you. So there's still duality here, and there's still conflict. So spiritual people, what? Have the pain of separation from God. That's painful. Only a subtle mind will feel it. But it's painful to be separate from yourself, even if you're reasonably happy. In fact, there was a guru many years ago when I was in California back in the 60s, and I was walking on the street one day, and there was a sign on a telephone post. That was before the internet and everything. So whenever one of these spiritual gurus came to town, that the devotees would go around and put their posters on the telephone posts. You know, I don't know that they have telephone posts anymore here. I don't think so. No, they're gone. But in the days when I grew up, there was telephone posts everywhere, and that was how you advertised things. And I saw this poster by this guru, and you know what it said? It said, "Come to me when you're already happy." That means just the happiness of knowing that there is a God and that I'm one with God doesn't solve the problem. I want what? I want to be perfectly satisfied with what? With my body, with my emotions, with my mind, and with the world. That's the fruit of the knowledge of God. That's perfect knowledge. That you get perfect satisfaction. There's nothing in you that wants things to be different from what they are on any level. Now, if you know that you're one with God and you're really convinced, but you're still got some emotional issues, well, that's not good enough, is it? So the final stage is what? Getting rid of those what? Those obstacles. Usually they're childhood stuff. Usually it's deep childhood patterns that you've never been able to overcome. And root those out and get rid of those. So the final stage is, we call it self-actualization. And the fruit of self-actualization is, I'm perfectly satisfied. Perfectly satisfied means I'm free. Understand? So, what is the identity? What is the identity between me and God? Me as a person, as a conscious being, and God as what? A conscious being. What's because our jobs are different, aren't they? Huh? God's job is different from my job. My job is just to run my little life, isn't it? Teach my Vedanta, love my wife, pay my bills, right? Maintain my health, you know, so forth and so on. That's my job. But what's Ishwar, what's God's job? To maintain the whole creation. To create, sustain, and destroy the whole creation. Okay, so what's the connection? There has to be an identity here, doesn't there? If reality is non-dual, that's our point of view. This is a non-dual reality. It's non-dual. It means there are not two principles operating here. That's what non-dual means. Dual means there's two principles. But our argument is, Vedanta's teaching is, there's only one principle. So if there's only one principle, then there has to be an identity between me and God somewhere.
I do as him does.
What?
I do as him does. I call it now him. I mean, I do as God does. I mean, the same way he organizes, I get in tune, I get aligned to the ways.
Well, okay, yes, but no, because there's difference. It's a similarity, yes, I am similar to God, I'm like God, I'm God-like in the sense that I manage this small thing. But I'm dependent upon God for that, but I don't want to be dependent upon God. I want to be free of God. So at what level am I free of God? This is,
When I leave my body. When I leave my body.
You're already beyond your body.
Exactly. I mean.
But how do you leave it?
By epiphanies, by knowing.
No, epiphanies, no, epiphanies aren't going to do it because epiphanies end. So if you leave your body, then when the epiphany ends, you come back to your body. So epiphany's experience is not going to solve my problem. That's what people think. No, that's what's called yoga. Yoga is the idea that the God's a fourth state, an altered state or a higher state or a transcendental state that's beyond the three states that I experience, the waking, dream, and deep sleep state, that's beyond the world. And I can what? Do some action, practice some yoga that's going to what? Cause me to transcend my body and my mind and go to another state where God lives, where God exists, and what? And merge or melt with God, and experience my oneness with God. That's called yoga. There are many variations of that. It's an experiential thing. But look, how are you going to go there unless you do actions? And if you do actions, are the results of those actions going to be infinite or finite? Finite. But you want an infinite result, don't you? You want freedom. That means limitless. So any act, and you that's doing the action, is that a limitless being or a limited being that's doing the action? Huh? Limited. It's a limited being, isn't it? Now, is it reasonable to assume that a limited being can do an action that will produce a limitless result? No. It's not even reasonable. It's just stupid. It can't happen. Any action, the result of any action is proportional to the nature of the action. So if I put out 10 units of energy, I'm not going to get more than 10 units of energy back. If I put 50 units of energy, I'm going to get 50 units back. Actually, there may be a little loss. It's called entropy, but never mind. But now, what action that me as a limited being, and I know all my actions are limited, right? What action can I do to get a limitless result? Not possible. The only way it's going to work is what? If I'm already God. Now, what is my identity with God? This is the issue.
Maybe creating balance.
No, but no. Now, you got to go one step deeper. One step deeper. What do you need to create? What is, before you create anything, what needs to be present? Well, knowledge.
And love.
No, something else. You need knowledge. But even before knowledge, what do you need?
Thoughts.
Consciousness.
Yeah. Consciousness, existence. Because any created object has to become from something else, doesn't it? Okay, the universe, the Big Bang. Okay? Well, you know the Big Bang. Now, did the Big Bang bang out of nothing? Huh?
Probably not.
Probably not, definitely not. Because why? Because you can't get something out of nothing. You can only get something out of something. You can't get something out of nothing. It's impossible. If something doesn't exist, then how are you going to get something existent out of it? If something exists, it's got to what? Come from something that exists. But, So prior to creation, there has to be what? Existence. Doesn't there? And what? And so prior to God, there has to be what? Because God's just a what? A function that what? Looks after the objects in existence. It creates the objects and what? And it maintains the objects and it destroys them. But it had to exist prior to that action, didn't it? Didn't it? How's it going to create? Unless it's already present. Because you can't get a universe out of nothing. So where's the universe coming from? From existence. Existence was here without a universe. It didn't have, there was no universe here. And then at some point, we don't know when or how, particularly, the universe appeared. If there wasn't anything here before the universe appeared, we wouldn't even know there was a universe here. Would we? Huh? Now, what about me? Okay, leave God out of the picture. Forget God. What about me? What do I need to what? Create, maintain, and ruin my life? What do I need? I need to exist, don't I? Don't I exist prior to my life? Oh, I know you're having a hard time with this because you think you're the body, right? But where did the body come from? The body didn't create itself, did it? Did it? You know very well the body didn't create itself because it's inert. How can it create itself? So you must have been here prior to your body. And what else do you need to function here? Not only do you need existence, but you need consciousness, don't you? Because how can you operate, how can you think and feel and act unless you're conscious? Can you do that? You can only think and feel and act if you're conscious. If you're not conscious, you can't. So what's the common factor between God and me?
Existence.
Existence and consciousness. Follow the logic. It's very simple. Which means what? I can do what I do because I am existent consciousness, and God can do what God can do because God is existent consciousness. God just has a different what? A bigger job, and I've got a smaller job. It's like the difference between the president and the CEO and the guy that's working on the factory floor. The CEO takes care of the whole company, and the little guy in the factory just does a little job in the mailroom on the factory. But neither one of those two can do their job, what, unless they both exist and they're both conscious. Isn't it? So what's the difference? Yeah, no difference. There's no difference. Only the jobs, the roles are different. Like for instance, I'll give you another example. When you're in the room with your son or daughter, you're a mother or a father, is that right? Huh? When your mother comes into the room, what are you now? You're a daughter. You're not a mother anymore, are you? You're a daughter. But what's the identity? Huh? And when your husband comes in the room, then what are you? You're the wife. Right? Or he's the husband, either way you want to look at it. And when your boss comes in the room, what are you? An employee. Right? Now, what's changed? The roles. But what about you? Have you changed? No. You haven't changed. You're exactly the same. You're exactly the same when your daughter's in the room, when your mother's in the room, when your husband's in the room, and when your boss is in the room. Only your what? Relationship to the object around you changes. But there's no difference, is there? They're all conscious, intelligent, existent beings, and you're a conscious, intelligent, existent being. So what? You share the same identity. Or just look at it as people. They're people and you're people. Okay, think of it like that if you want to. The problem with thinking you're a person is that what? That's a totally limited identity too. But tell me where the limitation is involved in seeing yourself as existence. Huh? What kind of limitation is involved if you are existence itself?
There's no limitation.
No limitation. Why? Because there's not 2 existences or 3 existences or 4 existences or 5 existences or 1,000,000 existences, is there? Existence is only one. And everything is made out of this one existence, isn't it? It's hot in here, is it? And after lunch, I had a big lunch. I hope I'm still making sense. And I'm getting the high sign from Vedamurti that time to take a break. Huh?
No.
Yeah.
No. It's the end.
Huh? This is the end. Oh, that's such a shame. God, look at all we have you're missing. Oh, that's terrible. So you're going to have to read the book and invite me back.